The new Red Bull Dragonberry Energizer is now at McDonald's. Made with freeze-dried dragon fruit and made to lock in. The all-new Energizer, now at McDonald's.
Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Believe.
My name is Brenda. Welcome to Horrifying History, where you will hear about the unexplained and supernatural events that have stained the pages of history. They say monsters don't always hide in the shadows. Sometimes they wear expensive suits, carry a doctor's bag, and charm everyone they meet. In autumn of 1888, as fear gripped the streets in London's Whitechapel district and Jack the Ripper terrorized the city, a mysterious American doctor found himself at the center of one of history's greatest mysteries. So break out your stethoscopes, my spooky friends. Today, you will hear the story of one of history's strangest medical frauds, whose trail of controversy went around the world. There are people that history remembers because they changed the world. Others are remembered because they terrified it. But every once in a while, there's a person who doesn't fit in either category. There was one who was so odd and controversial that historians are still arguing about him more than a century after his death. He claimed to be one of the greatest physicians alive, but medical experts called him a fraud. He became insanely wealthy selling miracle cures that didn't work. He traveled the world dressed like royalty, wearing diamond rings, and living a life of luxury. He bragged about his relationships with the elite while collecting preserved human organs. He openly despised women and fled countries to get away from angry mobs and criminal charges. In the autumn of 1888, when women were being butchered on the streets of Whitechapel, he found himself under suspicion of being Jack the Ripper. The 19th century was a dangerous time. Today, if someone gets an infection, they go to a doctor, receive some antibiotics, and often recover with a few days of rest. But during the early 1800s, doctors had no idea what caused disease. The germ theory had yet to gain acceptance. Many physicians believed that illness came from bad smells, foul air, imbalanced bodily fluids, or as a punishment from God. Hospitals were places that many people feared. Surgery was performed without anesthesia, and doctors went from patient to patient or even performing autopsies without washing their hands. They didn't wear gloves. It sounds a bit unbelievable in our time, but back then, this was normal. At the same time, medicine was hardly regulated. Almost anyone could declare that they were a doctor and start treating patients. Some genuinely wanted to help their fellow man. Others saw it as an opportunity to cash in. Traveling miracle doctors started popping up across Europe and North America. They sold powders, tonics, elixirs, magic pills, and healing oils. If someone promised a cure, people listened, since many times these miracle doctors were their only hope. It was into this world that Francis Tumblety was born, and he would spend much of his life exploiting that desperation. Francis was born in Dublin, Ireland in 1833. His parents, James and Margaret, had 10 children together and were financially struggling. Ireland during the early 19th century was a country marked by poverty, political unrest, and limited opportunities for most working families. Long before the catastrophe of the Great Famine, countless Irish families were already seeking better lives elsewhere. When Francis was young, he and his family immigrated to what was then called Upper Canada, which is the present-day Canadian province of Ontario. They eventually moved to the Rochesterville area of New York State and discovered that life for immigrant families was far from easy. Homes were modest, work was physically demanding, and money was scarce. Children were expected to contribute to the household from a very early age, and survival was more important than education. At the age of 17, Francis started selling books which were believed to be of a pornographic nature. He was also briefly employed as a cleaner at a Rochester hospital. Not long afterwards, Francis decided to leave home and move to Detroit. Even though he was only 17 years old, some thought that Francis was too confident and was fascinated by appearances and the power of persuasion. It was these traits that would help him get a job assisting a local practitioner who sold herbal medicines. This was not a medical school or a formal scientific-based training. Francis was selling alleged cures that his employer made. He excelled in sales since he learned how fear influenced decisions and what words to use to inspire confidence. Most importantly, he learned that if someone believed a cure worked, they would convince themselves it had. In other words, my spooky friends, Francis learned about the placebo effect before it was even a thing. He found out that hope was profitable. By the time Francis was in his 20s, he was not just Francis Tumblety anymore. He became Dr. Francis Tumblety. There was one problem with this. There is no evidence that he actually attended any legitimate medical school. Instead, he just took the title. He then purchased himself elegant clothing, a walking stick, and business cards. He created advertisements and started touring communities as an expert physician. During these times, society put an enormous trust in outward appearances. If a person looked like a doctor, they would assume that that person was a doctor. One of Francis's greatest marketing decisions was to call himself an Indian herb doctor. Now, to our spooky ears, this phrase is not okay, but in the mid-1800s, many traveling healers claimed to possess secret remedies that they allegedly learned from indigenous people. These claims were not supported by any evidence and were, for the most part, fabricated to attract customers. Francis claimed to possess ancient botanical secrets, rare healing herbs, and natural remedies ignored by regular physicians. In an age when so many distrusted traditional doctors, Francis's strategy worked very well. He traveled from town to town and advertised his appearance in advance. By the time he got to his next location, large crowds would already be gathered. Some came out of curiosity, and others came because they were desperate. It didn't matter what condition a person had. Francis would claim that his elixirs would save them, and people paid him for these quite well. When Francis came to a town, he would put on what witnesses described as a theatrical performance. He was confident and loud, almost impossible to ignore. He knew how to command a room, and he spoke with complete certainty. Modern psychology has proven that people often equate confidence with competence, but the two are not the same thing. Some of history's greatest experts were cautious when they spoke, whereas a fraud often spoke with absolute certainty. It was Francis's confidence that made people believe that his tonics were revolutionary. Every conversation he had was a sales pitch, and it worked quite well. As his reputation grew, so did criticism. Licensed doctors accused him of practicing medicine illegally. He was mocked by medical journals, and newspapers called him a dangerous quack. Others insisted that he cured them. Francis loved all of this attention. Whether good or bad, this kept his name in the news. He knew that what was important was to remain in the public's eye, and that was more important than anyone's approval. By the late 1850s, Francis was very wealthy. He bought expensive horses, elegant carriages, fine clothing, and rare books. Through his relentless self-promotion, the money continued to flow into his hands. But Francis wasn't just satisfied with money. He wanted influence and status. He started to seek out politicians, military officers, business leaders, and judges in hopes that he could elevate his reputation. This was because Francis knew if people believed that important men respected him, then ordinary people would too. When the American Civil War started in 1861, the United States was engulfed in unimaginable violence. Hundreds of thousands were killed. Disease took the same number of lives that the bullets and bombs did. For Francis, this was an opportunity. He traveled through the United States offering his medical services and selling his tonics. He claimed that he supported the Union in this conflict, but even so, his activities occasionally attracted suspicion. Federal authorities investigated allegations that Francis was involved in shady dealings with military personnel on both sides. This didn't result in any charges, but it was when the clothes he wore changed to a military nature. Francis became rich by traveling and selling his alleged cures, like Tumblety's Pimple Destroyer and Dr. Morse's Indian root pills. According to Francis, by 1857, he practiced his so-called medicine in Canada before he moved to New York and Washington. Francis said that his medical approach was based on herbal remedies and not the current cures that use things like mercury or surgery. When he was in Boston, the police believed that he was somehow connected to the death of one of his patients, but they did not have enough evidence to prosecute him. On May 5, 1865, Francis was arrested on the orders of the Secretary of War, Edwin Stanton. He was charged with complicity in the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. Police believed that Francis was an associate of David Herold. David was captured with John Wilkes Booth. Francis denied any association with David, and since there was no evidence to show Francis was involved, he was released. Francis then went to Rochester, New York. He displayed his wealth and social standing as much as possible, claiming he made his fortune by patenting his tonics. He then moved to Maryland and then St. Louis, Missouri. Then in 1881, Francis was arrested in New Orleans for pickpocketing. When he was brought into the police station, Francis claimed to be an employee of the U.S. District Attorney and talked his way out of charges. The person who arrested him would later be accused of trying to blackmail Francis. After settling into his home in St. Louis, Francis would host dinner parties for men only. While in his home, visitors noticed something quite disturbing. In Francis's private rooms, guests claimed that he displayed a large collection of preserved anatomical human specimens. Even more disturbing was that several accounts claimed that Francis possessed preserved female reproductive organs displayed in glass jars. Some reports say that there were dozens of them, while others claimed there were far more. We don't know exactly how many or if these reports were accurate, but considering there were multiple independent statements, there is likely some truth to these reports. When asked, Francis claimed that his collection was for educational purposes and that he used them when talking to patients about disease. Even back then, many visitors found the display disturbing and grotesque. The most disturbing part of Francis's personality was his attitude towards women. He frequently made incredible misogynistic remarks. He claimed that women were responsible for many illnesses and that women were beneath him. Many of his acquaintances believed he hated women. Charles Dunham, who was an American Civil War journalist, forger, and spy, claimed that Francis would denounce all women and had a special hatred for sex workers. Francis said that this was due to him having a failed marriage to a prostitute. At one all-male party, Charles claimed that Francis allegedly displayed a collection of uteruses preserved in jars in his study. He bragged that they, and I quote, came from every class of woman. What he didn't know was that Francis at this point had at least 12 aliases, was often on the wrong side of the law, and had numerous convictions for forgery and perjury. This is why today's historians are not fully sure if Charles' statement was true or not. Now, before we continue with today's dark tale, you all need to know that not every story about Francis Tumblety can be independently verified. Some accounts of what he allegedly did or did not do emerged decades later. Enough testimony survives to suggest that he had hostile and bigoted views towards women. However, some of the accounts may have been influenced by a crime so horrible that we still talk about it to this day. At this time of Francis's life, opinions of him were sharply divided. His admirers described him as intelligent, compassionate, and generous. His critics said that he was a dangerous imposter exploiting the vulnerable and a narcissist. Francis donated money to multiple charities, yet continuously bragged about his importance. He treated the poor without charging them sometimes, but he charged the wealthy extraordinary fees. He seemed desperate to be admired, but often acted in ways that pushed people away. By the early 1880s, Francis was known internationally. He traveled extensively between North America and Europe. He stayed in luxury hotels and attended the most elite social gatherings. Francis collected expensive antiques and bought lavish items for himself. But beneath the surface, authorities thought that Francis was not what he seemed. Authorities in multiple locations were skeptical about his claims, and medical professionals openly questioned his credentials. Former patients accused him of deceiving them. Journalists started looking at Francis more closely, and for the first time, Francis could not charm everyone. During these times, London was the capital of the largest empire in the world. It was the home for over 5 million people. For visitors like Francis, London was full of opportunity. But London also had another face that was hidden from tourists. Whitechapel was one of the poorest places in England. Thousands of immigrants who lived there searched for work, and factory pay was extremely low. Housing was overcrowded, and entire families often shared a single room. Sanitation was very poor, and disease spread rapidly. Every night, thousands of homeless people would search for a safe place to sleep. Many single or widowed women had to do sex work to survive, since there was almost no other option available. And during this all, a killer stalked the streets. Francis, as we mentioned previously, visited Europe many times. He claimed that he met Charles Dickens and the King of Germany. He said that he provided treatment to Louis Napoleon, the last monarch of France. While in Europe, Francis set up shop at 177 Duke Street in Liverpool, offering his cure-all elixirs, which he claimed were the secrets of American indigenous people. During this time frame, 5 women became victims of a serial killer that we're still talking about almost 140 years later, Jack the Ripper. They were Marianne Nichols, Annie Chapman, Elizabeth Stride, Catherine Eddowes, and Mary Jane Kelly. If you want to learn more about these victims, the investigation, and the suspects concerning these crimes, you should listen to our episodes 90 and 91, where we took a deep dive into this case. The links are in today's show notes. Each murder escalated public fear. Victims suffered horrifying injuries, and the killer appeared to know human anatomy. Organs were removed, and incisions appeared to be deliberate. Police believed the person they were looking for had medical knowledge, and who had that knowledge? That would be Dr. Francis Tumblety. In 1888, Francis was almost 60 years old. He still dressed flamboyantly and stayed at the best hotels. He was socializing with high society and projected the same bold confidence that he had for decades. But his unusual quirks attracted attention. Some found that he was eccentric, and others thought that he was arrogant. Witnesses claimed that Francis expressed that he thought women were beneath him and would talk about his fascination with his anatomical collection. Francis did not gain police attention because of Jack the Ripper, but only 2 days before Mary Kelly's murder, Francis was arrested on charges of gross indecency involving adult men. Under Victorian law, any homosexual acts, even if consensual, were a criminal offense. The charge of gross indecency became infamous only a few years earlier and was used against many individuals, like writer Oscar Wilde. In today's times, we view this as discriminatory and unjust, but in the Victorian times, it was a serious crime with both legal and social consequences. Police alleged that Francis engaged in inappropriate conduct with multiple men after being caught in the middle of having relations with another. His arrest placed him in police custody at the exact moment that the police were looking for Jack the Ripper. Even though Francis was not released on bail until November 16, 1888, some believe that he was released before then. Stuart Evans and Paul Gainey gave details in their 1996 book called Jack the Ripper, the First American Serial Killer. They claim that Francis was a temporary resident in a boarding house in Whitechapel during the Ripper murders. After being released on bail, Francis was expected to return to court concerning the gross indecency charges, but instead, he boarded a ship and fled to England. He went to France using the name of Frank Townsend. Francis then boarded a ship and returned to America. Already notorious for his self-promotion and breaking laws, his arrest in London was reported on by the New York Times, which said that Francis was connected to the Ripper murders. In an article in the Democrat and Chronicle, they spoke to one of Francis's acquaintances. He stated, and I quote, "Knowing him as I do, I should not be the least surprised if he turned out to be Jack the Ripper." The public was very suspicious of Francis. After all, why would an innocent person run away across the world? In Victorian times, fear of being convicted of indecency would have been reason enough. Maybe he thought he couldn't have a fair trial, or maybe it was because he thought investigators were getting too close for another reason. After his escape, Francis wrote a pamphlet with the title Dr. Francis Tumblety, Sketch of the Life of the Gifted, Eccentric, and World-Famed Physician. In this, he denied the rumors in the press, but did not mention anything about the charges or his arrest. One of the most important reasons that Francis remained part of the Jack the Ripper lore is because of a letter that was written years later. In 1913, former Scotland Yard Chief Inspector John Littlechild wrote to journalist George R. Sims, who was investigating the Ripper murders. In that letter, John mentioned Francis as a likely suspect. He wrote that Francis was arrested during the murders and was a likely suspect connected to these deaths. John suspected Francis due to his previous criminal record and his extreme misogyny. So, let's take a quick look at the evidence. Francis possessed a collection of preserved female reproductive organs. He told countless people that he hated women. He claimed that he had medical expertise and fled England after his arrest. A senior Scotland Yard inspector named him as an important suspect. But there are some problems with the case against Francis Tumblety. There is no physical evidence to link him to any murder. No one identified him, and no bloody clothes were found. There was no murder weapon, confession, or documentation linking him to these murders. Victorian investigators had very limited forensic science during these times. The case against him is almost entirely circumstantial. Francis did have his odd human body part collection, but that doesn't mean he was a killer. Some historians argue that his collection reflected the strange collecting habits of the times. Ultimately, the evidence against Francis is intriguing, but not even close to being conclusive. After returning to America, the Ripper case stalled, and Francis returned to what he knew best: reinventing himself. Despite of his damaged reputation, he continued traveling, selling his elixirs, and presenting himself as a physician. He continued wearing expensive, military-style clothing and boasted about his accomplishments. There is very little evidence that Francis developed close personal relationships. He didn't get married or have any children. By the turn of the 20th century, Francis had created an estate worth an astonishing amount of money. He invested in various properties, owned valuable possessions, and collected an extensive collection of both books and antiques. He then returned to Rochester, New York, and moved in with an elderly female relative. He then went back to St. Louis, where he passed away from heart disease on May 28, 1903. His body was buried in a family plot in Rochester. His cash holdings alone were worth about $5 million in today's currency. This became the subject of a lawsuit, which was eventually settled by a compromise between the claimants in 1908. Francis's life continues to fascinate historians, not because of what we know happened. It's because of what we do not know. History is not always neat and tidy, and it rarely has perfect endings. Sometimes the villain is caught, justice is served, and the story ends with a satisfying conclusion. But our story today does not. Jack the Ripper disappeared without ever being convicted. No evidence emerged, and every suspect in these killings, including Francis, has compelling arguments and doubts. Maybe someday a lost document will be discovered that will reveal something that was missed. Or maybe one of the greatest mysteries in criminal history will remain a mystery. Thank you for joining me today. What are your thoughts concerning Francis Tumblety? Did he believe he was a healer, or was he knowingly scamming people for his entire life? Was he one of the most famous serial killers in history, or was he a scapegoat? Let us know your thoughts on Facebook at Horrifying History, Instagram and Threads at Horrifying_history, X at Horrifying HIST1, or Blue Sky by searching for Horrifying History. If you haven't already done so, please remember to subscribe to our podcast. When you do, you not only let more people know about our show, but also download our next episode on its release day. It's a great way not to miss our next episode. Abducted Above Manhattan. To learn even more about Horrifying History, visit our website. When you're there, you will find links to all of our social media and to our YouTube channel, which features not just our podcast episodes, but also additional history-based videos for your enjoyment. We also have a blog that's filled with spooky topics and episode updates to read up on. On top of this site is the home to our fan club, which offers excellent perks like your own feed to listen to our show ad-free, access to new episodes a week early, and a new bonus episode each week. It is also the home to our store filled with spooky merchandise that you guys will love. For our fan club members, you will receive a permanent discount in our store as long as you remain a fan club member. You can find all of this and more at horrifying-history-shop.fourthwall.com. Until next time, stay spooky.